G'day.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Good. G'day. Sun's still not up. I'm a little dark in here. I think it might be my camera, but at least my camera's working. That's a good thing. Yeah, I'm a little late this morning because the technical problems is a bit of an understatement. I would say maybe really should have thought about preparing last night. I went to stream to Twitch, and what happened was that broke. And the reason why was because I spent a ton of time this week in my firewall making changes to my IP filter tables, which literally had to troubleshoot on the fly. It turns out basically one of my changes that I made was bad. Well, some was bad, but interestingly enough, Twitch, when it tries to connect, I'm streaming to Australian servers right now. Fun fact. However, when it does the initial connection, it authenticates to Hong Kong.
Right.
And Hong Kong's on a country-based block for me at this point in time. Like, I'm going to have to do some very funky IP table work to kind of get that, so kind of overwrite a single instance where it's allowed from my IP address. But yeah, that was a bit of a fun one. For the moment, I've just stopped. Oh, there we go. Now it's up the exposure, and it's turned it back down again. Essentially, I've got to fix that, which, yeah, not fun. While I'm waiting on that, I'll see if Gael is around. Just quickly, so. If he's around, I'll see if he can drag me on the Teams call. But I think if he's around, he's around. If he's not, he's not. We can go from there. Let's see who's in chat. Oh wow, we've got a few people in chat. G'day everybody. Hope you stick around. My daughter's just wanted to walk in and say hello. Hey sweetie. I don't know where mummy is. Sorry, Daddy's playing right now. Oh, Daddy's working right now, okay? I'll play 3 Billy Go Scruff with you later, okay? Alright, well, it's all been happening this morning. Yeah. So, there's a, yeah, and so it authenticates to Hong Kong, which was a bit of a pain. And then, okay, I got it all working, and I'm trying to figure out why I can't hear anything. And I'm like, it was working just before, and I was messing around with the gain filters within OBS, and then I figured out that my audio services crashed because there's no devices. I'm like, did something break? So I restarted the audio service, and that's all brought it all back online, which is great. But I do have to do some further digging this morning. Lots of issues. To be honest, I've troubleshooted. Fastest troubleshooting I've done in a very long time. Usually I'm like, oh, okay, yep. Now it's like, I've got a stream to do. I'm running late. So, yeah, anyway, welcome. So what's been happening with yourself, Christian, since we've last spoke?
Oh, not much, all things considered. It's been a bit average at work. For those who don't know, I work as the Technical Officer for Education Queensland. Essentially what that means is I'm the on-site support person. And I essentially fill a quasi-system admin level 1 help desk role.
I was just quickly to say, so for those of the guys that are joining us, Christians, we used to do streams way back when basically,
2019.
Yeah, like we basically, think of this, it's 2022 now, 2019. Like it feels like it was yesterday. And that was back at my old place. But that's like a long time ago. That's a long time ago.
It is indeed.
Yeah. It's pretty nuts. Yeah, so we go way back, and essentially I taught PowerShell to Christian, and we basically spent a bit of time mucking around and essentially just, kind of learning PowerShell as we on the fly there. I was kind of really kind of making it up as I went along there. So we're going to do the same thing today, except with the desired state configuration. If Gael is, I know that if Gael's online, he'll send a message in chat. But essentially what we're going to be doing today, the game plan today is we're going to essentially focus on, there's 3 levels of DSC, as I kind of like to call it. We've got the basic DSC, we've got parameterized DSC, and then we have DSC combined with datum, which is a PowerShell module. We're going to just basically focus. We'll see how far we go. We're just going to kind of like muddle around and see that. Essentially, we're going to be starting from nobody knows anything about configuration management. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Feel free to interrupt. There's people in chat as well. Feel free to interrupt, ask questions. If Gael jumps in, he'll probably take over the lesson. If he doesn't, he doesn't. It's all right. But essentially, yeah, we'll basically build our way up. And what I'm going to probably do is we're going to look at, hopefully we can look at a DSC pull server, as well as looking at it through Azure Automation. And maybe some Azure Hybrid Guest Management, which I don't think we're going to be able to do today, but I hopefully get a Azure Automation DSC pull server up would be nice. We'll see how we go. All right, let's get started. Firstly, any questions? Any concerns? Any?
Not from me.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm just going to quickly turn you up a little bit. Is the audio good? Like, is everyone? You can hear everybody quite well. Christian, I'll just get you to do a quick chit chat. Tell me something about yourself that chat doesn't know.
I thought I covered pretty much all of that. Essentially where I work.
Okay, yeah. You're not moonlighting as an Uber driver?
No, my vehicle's too old for that. As far as I'm aware, for Uber, a vehicle needs to be less than 10 years old.
Does it?
Yeah, in addition to you need an extra license to be able to do it. Essentially, you're allowed to make money off people for driving.
It's kind of like you need a taxi license.
Yeah.
You know what's really interesting about that, though? Okay, it's just not interesting about the Uber thing, but so you know my blue Pulsar, like my 2001 blue Pulsar. So I was out and about, and I was actually in my it's Amy's new car, so she's got a CX-30. So I was driving around in a CX-30, and I had to go to the doctor's. And I was coming back from went to the car wash, and I was at Strathpine, and I was coming back through the doctor's, and that was basically going. I usually don't go down the main Gippy Road. I kind of like slip down the back where the Strathpine station is there.
Yep.
And you wouldn't believe it. I drove by my 2001 Pulsar. I'm like, nah, no way. Like it can't be the car. You know, and I'm like, stop, turn around, go park next to the car. And I go and I've got some photos of it. 100% is my car. And they literally did nothing to the car when they grabbed it. Like, it literally has everything that, like, it still had the baby seat that we got given it in it. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, there's my Pulsar. And I'm like, I think it's at a car lot, which like deals with like, stripping, like it's like a wreckers. Yep. And I'm like, man, yeah, like that car's had its days now. Like, it's a good car, but it leaks in it. Core pack, like it costs more now to fix it. It's just not worth it. Anyway, all right, I digress. All right, let's actually go and do some DSC. So the first thing I want to talk about DSC is, so you can, we're going to actually just create a temp directory here and create a new file here. You can actually see my, let's see if I can, you're following along with me within LiveShare. Just make sure that you can see what I can see, the DSC.ps1 on the screen.
That's correct.
Cool. All right. Desired state configuration. So the first thing we need to talk about is that desired state configuration is a domain-specific language, which basically essentially is a subset language within a main language. That's probably the best way to describe it. So DSC essentially is a domain-specific language for configuration management in PowerShell. Now, I'm going to start rattling off a lot of terms here. I'm going to explain the term quite extensively. Feel free to stop, re-ask me what the term is if you need to ask questions. So, and this also goes to chat. So the first thing is that DSC is a domain-specific language. The second thing, okay, so what DSC does is DSC takes the domain-specific language. Oh, sorry, it's 7 o'clock. I was up at 6 this morning, and I'm actually pretty tired because I went to bed really late. So the DSC is translated into a MOF file. We're going to look at a MOF file. So when you compile DSC is compiled. So when you actually run the command to create, I like to basically say, hey, I want to run DSC, it's going to compile it. So, and the one thing is that DSC is compiled into a MOF file. Now I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the future state of DSC. Actually, no, wait. I won't yet. I'll do that just in a minute. At the MOF file, a MOF file is basically a configuration management file that is essentially MOF stands for Manage Object Format. I actually have a MOF file here. Let's go and have a look at this MOF file. Output. Definitely in the wrong. Yeah, I'm in the wrong one. Hang on one sec. That's all right. We can open up the other one. All right, so this essentially is a MOF file. So you can see here, it translates it into a language, a domain-specific language, which you're supposed to be able to use. Back in the day, it was kind of like, hey, you can use a MOF file to manage configuration state on your machine. People took one look at the MOF file and gone, yeah, nah, we're not doing that. That's just too difficult. So DSC kind of stepped in as a mediator. So the MOF file basically it gets translated into a MOF file. And then that MOF file gets then passed into our configuration engine. Which essentially within Windows. All Windows, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about configuration engine, and then I'm going to jump back and talk about MOF. Sorry for the yawning. All right, so the configuration engine essentially functions, it is the best way to describe a configuration engine is like group policy, is that it's a service that runs, that basically checks every 15 minutes or however minutes, I think 10 minutes is the minimum. You don't want to go any longer than 10 minutes because you can kind of like kill your system. But the idea is that it runs every 15 minutes. And what it does is it processes the MOF file and checks for changes and then makes those changes. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about DSC and MOF files. So DSC going forward with the newer versions of DSC and MOF are going to be decoupled. So essentially, at the moment, they're essentially one and the same. So DSC translates the MOF. There's no other option for that. But DSC in the future is going to be decoupled from MOF. And essentially, it's going to be an option that you can compile to. So you can compile DSC to a MOF, which essentially is a configuration management source for Windows. Or you can compile it to be a Puppet, Chef, configuration management, Ansible, those kinds of things, which is really kind of branching out and making it a lot more accessible and easy to use within the configuration management community. So that was one of the biggest gripes with DSC, is that it's hard coded specifically to Windows. Now that being said, DSC is available in Linux. It's just there's a lot, like it's not as mature as what you're going to get with any sort of other configuration management solution, like, you know, whether that's Ansible. Like Ansible within Linux is, you know, way more mature. There's so many more features. It's like having DSC, the Windows store, and Ansible, the Apple Play Store. Like there's so much more resources within the Apple Play Store, and no one really actually, let me rephrase that. The Windows Mobile Store, there was so much, like, there was a couple of apps in there that were pretty good, but like, I'll be honest, like it was, yeah, you're struggling to find good quality stuff. Now, I want to quickly jump back to DSC and why DSC is important. So DSC, the thing about, and this is really kind of goes with any sort of configuration management, and it's the first thing to really understand about it is that the code is idempotent. And what that basically means is that it can be run over and over again without any sort of issues. It basically, within a, as requirements change, it's basically what we will call idempotent. And the reason why this is important with configuration management is that configuration management, the goal of configuration management is two things. Is one, to enforce configuration. Actually, no, it's really one thing. It's to enforce configuration on a specific machine. So you can have the likes of group policy and Intune. Intune's probably the better solution for desktop clients. Keep in mind that DSC is available on Windows 10. I think it's on Windows from 8.1. It's from 8.1 to 11. It's available on desktop operating systems, so you can use it. There's certain things that you can't use, but at the end of the day, you can use it. But it's really designed for server operating systems, and the idea is that you want to prevent configuration drift. And configuration drift is best way is when I've set up a server. Gail's online. G'day, Gail. If you want to jump in on the stream, mate, send me an email. I'll quickly AFK and then I'll drag you in through Teams. There you go. Yeah, Gail basically says, yeah, so it's on WMF4 to WMF 5.1. So that WMF4 is 2012 R2. So the big thing about DSC is that, and this is the big take home, is that it enforces your configuration state. So you can have, let's say, a good example would be, and this is most people will use, is like a Windows service. You need that Windows service, in my instance, the audio service, not to crash and to restart. And so instead of me having to go troubleshoot the issue, it just basically, when the configuration management runs, it looks at it and goes, okay, the service is stopped. It's supposed to be started. We're just going to make it so. So I think like the best, like Wayne says, the best analogy is of the StarCraft when you have the battle cruiser. He's like, make it so. It's essentially that kind of thing. It's if it drifts out of the configuration state, you just want to bring it back in. It's kind of like and the reason why this approach is used is we talk about cattle, like server technologies, or so servers. So servers really should be treated like cattle, not pets. And the idea is that server, by you creating using configuration management, you're essentially documenting the instance of that server, which means that server then becomes less of a what we call either a snowflake, and what it means is that it's repeatable. And that means that then you can actually bring it into as a piece of cattle. And so if there's some issues with the server, if you want to actually, scale out the implementation of that server and make it HA, or, within the clustering, those kinds of things, it means that that server can actually support that. Hi, are you going to talk about CI pipeline, secret management, and stuff like that today? No, just DSC at this point in time. Secrets management and things like that, that's going to probably be a bit more of a, this is literally DSC 101. So I think that'll be a separate talk when we kind of talk about, all that kind of integration. One of the key things with, one of the key things is that we want to talk about, actually, give me 2 secs. I'm just going to go AFK. I'm not AFK. I just need to go check my email and see if Gail's actually sent me this quick Teams meeting. There we go. You want to Teams me in? Okay. Let me see if I can. I'm going to try this again, Gail. I'm going to try and add you in. I think you're going to have to send me a Teams meeting request, mate. Let me just see if I can. Yeah, I think you're going to have to send me a Teams meeting, mate. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, send me a Teams meeting. All right. So essentially, that is kind of the whole intended purpose of DSC. Like, it's essentially to be a configuration management solution where if a person makes a change to the server, whether it's unwittingly or unwittingly, or there's some sort of change occurs, you have a mechanism in place to be able to say, no, that's not right. It needs to be this. And one of the key things with DSC, which is really, really quite cool, is that and this applies to all configuration management, is the reporting capabilities, is that you can, within DSC, and this would be any other configuration management solution as well, you can actually see that configuration drift. Now, within Azure, so there's just two means to be able to do auditing. You have what we call, Change Inventory, which is a product which is offered within Azure Automation. Amazing, great tool. You can see everything that's changed on the machine. And you can use DSC as well. DSC is really, the key thing with DSC is that you don't want it to monitor everything. You only want it to monitor the things that you need to monitor. And the reason why is, a good example is, you wouldn't want to put DSC in Active Directory and say, okay, I want to enforce, all these group memberships and things like that, because DSC, the configuration service, when it refreshes, is going to have a really hard time running in the background. So it's going to be for things that really, really, really important, that essentially are explicitly defined. And this is one of the things as well with DSC, is that it's explicit, it's not implicit. So you need to explicitly say whether you want it to be present, whether you want it to be absent. So what I mean by that is that present essentially means it needs to be enforced. Absent means it is not to be enforced. Not to be enforced. It's the resource is not to be there. It present means it needs to be there. Absent means it's not to be there. Let me just check to see if Gail sent me that Teams meeting. 2 secs. PowerShell expert Q&A panel. I wouldn't say that, Gail. Oh God. No, I would say probably attempting to teach DSC is the best. Like the learnings from my mistakes is probably, we'll see. But I'm gonna quickly drag Gail. Gail, do you? I'll just, while I'm here, I'll send you the live Visual Studio Code live share link, so that then you can write DSC, and then we can basically, I can just set up a PowerShell remoting link into, I'll send you a PowerShell remote, and we can use PowerShell remoting to interact with my lab. Sorry, I'm just jumping in now. I'm just joining that meeting now. While I'm doing that, I'm going to quickly change my camera settings back. This is the one thing I love about like when we're doing streams like that. So it's super informal. Like it's kind of a little bit more podcasty, which I kind of like, actually. I kind of like that. Hey, let's just go and muck around in it. All right, there's Gail. G'day, Gail.
Hello.
All righty. Love your Australian. I love your Australian accent. Christian, are you there, mate?
Yeah, but I'm not in the Teams meeting. I'm in Discord.
Okay. You don't have any issue.
I had the echo because I had your live stream at the same time, so I had like the sun going into. Yes, I closed off the Twitch one.
I was going to say, you're like, hello. I'm just. You don't mind if I drag Christian into?
Go for it.
Yep, cool. I just grabbed a link. I'm just going to send this to you. There we go. Yep. I just like make sure I'm not. And then I've got to give you a live share link. Give me 2 secs.
If that works, yeah.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it works great.
As in,
give me a bit. Apparently, I haven't done Teams on this computer yet. So.
Okay, Christian's just having some issues with shenanigans. He's just got to install Microsoft Teams.
This is what happens when we have no
Yeah,
preparation.
you
the night
can do it
before.
from the browser.
Oh, you can do it from the browser. Yeah, that's right. You can do it from the browser.
Yeah, they're demanding I use Edge, and you know,
You don't
it's
use
a lot like that.
Edge. Oh,
No.
okay. He doesn't use Edge. Okay.
Ah.
All right.
You can do it from Chrome as well, I think.
You can,
Pretty sure I used Chrome.
It's a small file anyway, so.
okay.
Whatever works for him.
Yeah, whatever works. I've got to just get the collaboration link. I'm like so distracted right now.
All right.
There we go. Okay. All right. Can chat? Can you still hear us? Is everything still okay on your end? We're literally just fuddling our way through this process.
All right.
I'm just going to Yep. Okay, cool. Yep. I'm just going to drag you into the. Now I did this before, so I'm just going to figure out how I'm going to do this again. Drag you into the stream. Window capture. MS Teams. Oh, quick accept. There we go. I have to. Completely off topic. I said this to Christian this morning. I love the new Xbox app. Like, love it. The remote play capability. Like, I was in bed last night. I had the Xbox app. I was basically having my Xbox controller, which is still connected to my TV, and like no issues with that. And then basically just live streamed it to. I streamed it from my TV to my iPhone. I'm just basically playing South Park in bed. It was so cool. It's like, where's this technology been all my life? All right, you're now occupying. Okay, now that's a little better. I was going to say you're occupying like 90% of the screen, but now it's.
Yeah, that was too big. All right.
All right. You got the mood lighting on. Love it.
Yeah. It's
And I'm in now too, as you can see.
Okay. G'day. All right. We are cooking with gas. Okay, so what I'm going to do, we're currently using a variety of different technologies. I'm going to just mute okay, cool. I'm going to mute myself in Discord, but feel free to still use the Discord stream to see what's happening on my screen. All right.
No worries.
All right. So where were we? We're basically talking about configuration management. So I think probably the next thing we want to talk about is actually the language itself. Anything else I need to add, Gael?
So the problem that is something I usually try to say every time I talk about DSCs. There's different DSC. So when we talk about DSC, there's different stuff. There's DSC, the DSL, so the domain specific language, which is some of the things you touched on. That's the language you can write a configuration in, and that's also the framework that you can create resources. So in this case, it's just some PowerShell language constructs that you can create a resource, and then that gives you the get set test. And then you have the DSC part, which is the configuration management element to it, which is the LCM specifically for WMF, so Windows Management Framework 5.1. There was one in WMF 4 as well, but that's the old version. Let's call it the very old version that no one should use.
And should consider thinking about.
Don't use it. As in, it works, and you can get some of the job done. But the pool mode, as an example, like there's some differences in it. I'm not going to go into details, but basically, avoid the WMF4. Help yourself. Just migrate to PowerShell 5.1. Most of the recent OS anyway they all have 5.1, so that's the one to go for.
Okay.
And then you have the LCM. LCM is the agent. So sometimes people say, well, it's agentless. It's not. It's just that the LCM is the agent, the service running on your Windows machine that is already installed. So you don't have to install anything, but it's still an agent. So it's not agentless. LCM is the agent.
That's the one thing I forgot to say. So Christian, LCM stands for Local Configuration Management Service, correct? I just got to make sure, right? Okay, got it right. Yes, point for me.
Local configuration manager.
Yeah, essentially, that's what I mean. Like, so essentially, the LCM essentially, like, this is the way I kind of like try and compare it. Is that it's kind of like group policy, where group policy applies every 15 minutes, except it's a dedicated service for this specific. Essentially for mod files, so you shove a mod file and it makes it so.
So the main difference is it's based on a document. So you write, so you don't write it yourself, but basically you write a document and then you say, hey, that's the document, and then the agent, so the LCM, the agent on the machine says, hey, is there a document for me? That's the pull mode, right? Is there a document for me? Pulls the latest one. Make sure it has the latest one based on the server, and then say, oh, that's what I need to do. So then I will converge to that configuration state that you described in the document. So that's what it does, and that's what the LCM. So the LCM is just pulling the document, making sure it has everything in it. So pulling the required modules as well, and we can discuss that later. And then it will say, okay, that's the state I need to be in. So I will go for each DSC resource that are specified in that document, and I will make sure that I'm going to be in the state described there.
I think to kind of help Christian out here, let's. So one of the things that we'll just quickly talk about, Christian, with DSC is that DSC can run in two modes. It can run what we call them push and pull. So the best way to kind of describe what the push and pull modes are is that pushes. When you're using a remote session to connect to that machine to basically push DSC configuration to. Most of the time, like there's various scenarios when you want to use both. The pull service essentially is there's different services that you can use from a DSC pull server. Which essentially can do different things. So for instance, you've got a pull server which can run on an SMB share. You have a pull server that can run essentially serving HTTP/S. And the idea with the pull server is that you configure the local configuration management, local configuration management to essentially say, hey, I want to go to this pull server, and you want to say, I want to poll it every 15 minutes. The pull service, so the differences between the two pull services with the SMB pull service and the HTTP pull service, realistically, is the HTTP pull service has reporting where the SMB pull service doesn't. Now, I think that's pretty much that. I don't like. I was kind of like, yeah, okay. Well. Do we want to write some basic DSC, and then do we want to kind of like, because I think the way that I was going to run this lesson was write some basic DSC. We can basically, I've got a file server, we can just remote into here, invoke that DSC configuration, we can watch that change, and then from that, what we can do is expand into a pull server and looking at what the local configuration management settings are. Do you think that's the best approach?
Hey, that's your approach. Go for it.
I'm asking the God, like, is this the best approach?
No, that's fine. It's a good way to start. Writing the configuration is always, for people to understand. So at the same time, I would say that I don't write configuration scripts anymore, or very rarely. They're usually very, very short. Just for examples and, demos or stuff like this. But in practice, I don't really anymore. I write composite resource, which are very similar. So that's why it's good to use that anyway.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is I kind of want to make sure that he understands the desired state configuration, like syntax, understand the DSL, understand it being implemented, and then from that we can kind of start stepping up into the more advanced concepts. Yeah. All right. So let me just make sure that I can.
Yeah, go for it. In the meantime, I will say that there's different ways to approach it. So one way is doing this way. So start by learning DSC, the technology. So learning, what is the language, what is the DSL, how does it work, and then how do you compile a MOF, and then from that MOF, how do you apply the MOF to a machine, and then how do you maybe automatically set the machine to automatically pull the MOF from a reference point or server,
Okay.
SMB or HTTPS, or the Azure service as well. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, sometimes you don't necessarily need to understand the DSC language and technology to understand the principle. And I always think the principle is more important. That said, it's not necessarily the easiest way for people to grasp. So there's value in the two ways. And anyway, if you start with one, you will need to go to the other one at some point.
Yeah.
So there's no wrong way. There's just different ways.
I'm currently experiencing technical difficulties trying to connect to my endpoint.
You don't need to if you just want to compile a MOF to start with.
I was just trying to get that set up so that essentially I can, yeah, I was going to have that set up ready to go. All right, that's all right. All right, so let's write some DSC, I think. So first things first, Rob actually asked the question, what is a composite resource?
Good question. A composite resource is a configuration block, if you want. When you write a configuration, it's one script which declares everything. But because you will have something that's going to be repeated many times for different servers in different cases, then you will need to create a reusable block. In PowerShell, we have functions. The idea is a bit the same, where you have parameters for a configuration block, and that's a composite resource. It's just the name. It's a bad name. I call it a configuration block usually when I just talk about what it does, but it's called in the PowerShell documentation the composite resource.
I've just realized I've got the wrong project open, so give me a sec while you guys continue to natter. I'll.
Is there more questions?
I don't see any more questions at the moment. Christian, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment, no. But just so the audience is aware, my understanding of DSC is about as minimal as you can get it. I know what it is. I vaguely know what it does, as in what the name means. So desired state configuration is obviously the state you desire your endpoint or server to be in.
So how do you think it's how is it useful? Let's start.
How is it useful? I would
I'm just going to send you guys a new link. I just have to restart VS Code.
It's useful because it will allow you to deploy multiple endpoints or multiple servers with the exact same configuration. So if you're looking at a standard operating environment or a managed operating environment, it allows you to go, this is how I want every endpoint to be.
Yes. Yeah, so exactly. So the idea is you define everything in code so you can repeat and reproduce the same outcome, the same the same build, the same configuration every time. When we do this, there's things to understand. We only reproduce what's in the code. So don't start put things outside of the code, or at least limit them. But yes, that's totally right. That's what we do. So the idea is you write some code to manage your system, and then by managing this system, you can reproduce it and you can change it. That means what's important is not having something which is set up exactly in the way you want. What's important is being able to change it. So you change a little bit of code so you know the difference between two things, and then you can track this, make the change, test it, and then deploy it, and then go to the next change. So it's about being able to do small incremental change at relatively quickly, and testing in between to make sure you always have a good standard. Oh, DSC pipeline.
I'm just Trying to figure out, is this the, like, because I cloned 2 instances of it. I'm just trying to make sure I've got the right one.
That's not the right one. I
It's
think
not the right
the
one?
DSC pipeline you want. That's the PowerShell module that you have here, I assume. Yes.
Well,
So that's what is used. But
yeah.
it's good to see the tasks which are in the source folder, but you probably don't need that today. You just want the DSC pipeline.
Oh my gosh, I got really dark for us. Why am I so dark? What's going on? Like, sorry, I'm going to quickly. The reason why is because I had all my scripts in here, and I was like, hey, I could just go and open up some examples. But it turns out I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry, give me a sec. Sorry. It's not my day today. There's so many issues. It's not funny.
It's okay. So I will share anyway the links if people want to. Actually, the DSC workshop has been updated as well with the module you showed. So the sampler.dsc pipeline. So the DSC workshop is doing this as well. So I will send the link for the DSC workshop first. Where's the window? I have too many windows. I was putting the kids in bed and then I was not really prepared.
That literally is me. I literally woke up and gone, had a shower, time to go and have, and then realized I'm having all these issues and I'm trying to fix them.
That's okay.
Oh man. Well, this I feel like this is a lot more informal, but I think it kind of a lot less polished. I'm just trying to find where this.
It's called DSC pipeline. So I think the one you're looking at, it's like the very simple and simplistic version here. I don't know if that's the one you wanted to show, by the way, but I assume. So the github.com/synergy/DSC pipeline is the one.
That's the one I had open.
Yeah, the one above. Go back.
Oh, the one above.
So
yes, this is the one. Oh my gosh, sorry. Do you still have access?
Another question from the chat. It's where does learning DSC fit in with the brave new world of multi-platform? Seems to recall LCM stuff was all different.
So, okay, let me just check the question. There's 2 things to the question. Where does DSC learning with the brave new world of multi-platform? Well, seem to recall LCM stuff was all different. So what do you mean by multi-platform? Yeah, so multi-platform, you mean cross-platform with Linux and other stuff. Where does it fit? Well, it depends which part of DSC. That's the quick answer. So basically, DSC, as I said, there's different elements to it. There's the agent side, and there's the DSL on the framework side. So PowerShell DSC exists on Linux and Windows, the PowerShell 7.2. It's slightly different and doesn't have the agent. As in, it doesn't have the same agent, and I will go into more details in a bit. I would say the simple answer, where does learning DSC fit? It does fit. It depends what you're managing. If you're managing mostly Windows, it's still a good investment because there's this DSC vNext I'm going to talk in a second. So learning DSC is very useful on Windows because I think that's still the best way, or at least one of the best way to manage Windows. Windows environments in general, and then you can transfer the skills and also most of the concepts and configurations and stuff like this to the DSC vNext, which is Azure Guest Configuration. And we can go into more details. So it doesn't have to be Azure Guest Configuration, but at least there's things you can do with DSC on Linux. And I can be more specific if people want me to be more specific.
I've just had to share another invite link because, me being me doesn't know where to find the correct things.
Okay, so to answer the question's been updated. It was mainly about PowerShell 7 on Windows. So PowerShell 7 on Windows is the same as PowerShell 7 on Linux. Basically, you can do the There's a module. Now everything has been shifted to a module, and the module allows you to invoke the DSC resource. So if you write a DSC resource, you can use it on your script with invoke DSC resource in PowerShell 7 and PowerShell 7 on Windows and Linux. That works both ways. For the agent doesn't work. Like there's no agent per se, independent agent in the same way as we add in PowerShell 5.1. What exists is an Azure service, which is Azure guest configuration, Azure policy guest configuration, that allows you to do very similar things than what Michael is showing today, which is using PowerShell 7.2 or 7.1.3 on Windows and 7.2 on Linux. And so it's same type of scales, slightly different service and slightly different ways of using it, but you would write the same configuration. You would also compile a MOF. It's after the MOF that it changes a little bit.
I'm just go. Yeah, I think
There is, and for the record, PowerShell Summit North America, I will speak there, and I will talk about writing DSC resources cross-platform, so especially Linux in this case. And I know there will be other sessions. So I know Raymond Andre is doing one on the DSC workshop. And I think he's doing another one. Oh, he's doing another one on Sampler, I believe. So, and then PS Configure, which I'm one of the organizer, is going to be in Vienna in June, Austria. And there will be a lot of sessions on DSC, guest config, and all these things. I'll let you look at the sessions which are online. Not the session, sorry, the schedule. And it's psconf.eu. And I'll let you look at that.
Alrighty. While you're doing that, I'm just going to I'll quickly get started with the configuration, actual DSCL, the domain-specific language. So I just FYI, Gael, I had to share another VS Code live link because I closed the project down and opened it up again. Yep. So feel free to jump in again. So Christian, with the DSL, the first thing that we do is we use the configuration statement, and basically we give the configuration statement a name. So in this instance, we're going to give it service test. So essentially that tells it's this, like essentially that it says I'm lost for words right now. Essentially that says cool, Gael's in, cool. Essentially that just defines the configuration block. So essentially that's I'm so lost for words right now. Gael, can you help me out, please?
I can't because I don't know what you're writing right now because my workspace is still loading.
So I'm trying to explain what the configuration block is.
Okay, the configuration block. This is the part of the DSL, so the domain-specific language that tells PowerShell, okay, we're not in a standard PowerShell language mode. We are in a sort of specific language mode, which is the DSL for DSC.
Let's just top level DSL.
So it says, hey, whatever is within the next curly brackets, that's going to be some DSC stuff. So expect some DSC stuff.
Yeah, I think the other big take home is that if you're familiar with Pesta, it follows, well, Pesta is based off DSL or DSC, but essentially it's just the same syntax.
Pesta is also a DSL. Like you can write in PowerShell, you can write DSL pretty easily just by doing something like this.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is we're going to need to import the DSC resource. So
let me just say that those that are not used with DSL, the domain-specific language, what does that mean? Just to very simplify, a DSL is just to say, well, in this part, you will have some keyword that you would not find in other context. So that means, when you create, when you use PowerShell, you create a function. You have the function, that's part of the language because you build it. So you have the function, then you can use it. When it's DSC like this, you say, hey, we will introduce new keywords. So within the configuration block, say we will introduce new keyword, and there's different rules about finding those keywords. In this case, that's what you're doing. You say import DSC resource, and import DSC resource is actually not a function but a keyword, a dynamic keyword, and then you can and then you will tell, okay, the DSC compilation engine behind the hood is going to say, hey, you need to find all the DSC resource from that module name, which in this case, PS desired state configuration.
So import DSC resource is a function.
Well, it's not. It looks like it is, but it's not.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And one of the and this actually, I'm just going to take a quick step back. I'm going to go to our favorite gallery, the PowerShell gallery. So DSC, I'll quickly talk about DSC resources. So DSC resources, the best way to describe it is it's a specific, it's probably the best way to describe it would be a commandlet. Essentially, a resource is associated to, it'd be a commandlet. So a resource is associated to a module. So you still have PowerShell modules. So I'm just going to go to my favorite PowerShell module, which is JEA DSC. And within that, you'll have specific resources that are associated to that. So when I mean resources, I mean commandlets. And by commandlet, I mean we're using a very loose antidote.
So let's say, what is a resource? What is a resource in a computer? You have, you have one element that you want to manage. You have one graphic card. You can say, the configuration of the graphic card is one resource, and then you have different resources like this, and you can break it down as big and as small as you want. So that's what the principle of resource. It's like an object, and then you want to set this object in a specific state. That's the way I will present it.
Yeah.
So you can retrieve what is your current state. So you get, the current state, or maybe you want to test that the state is the same as what you expect. And then the third thing is, okay, if it's not what you expect, then you will set it to what you expect doing. So basically, a resource is it's an abstract to be able to say, well, it's not a commandlet, because a commandlet is always imperative, or sometimes it can be idempotent, but it's just a way that something that you execute. In this case, it's something that we want to define a state. So that's what the resource is for, to say, hey, I want it to be in that state. And then the resource itself is the code that makes it happen. That has all the logic.
You make it so much more elegant than I.
Sorry, what?
You make it so much more elegant than I can. I'm just like, it's like this. And then you're just like, this is a better way to say it. And I love it.
Just suggesting ways.
Yeah.
It's always hard. Like getting the concept is always hard when you've been doing, functions for forever, then changing. That's the problem with DSC. It's not difficult. It's not PowerShell. It's not difficult on the PowerShell side. The hardest part is shifting the mindset of running a script that to change A, change B, change C, change D, that's a process that's imperative to say, well, that's the state I want. So what happens for me to converge to that state eventually? That's the big mindset mindset shift.
Does anyone have any questions? Christian as well. There was a question. I've just quickly responded to it. Can one compare DSC resource to a PowerShell module? No, it's more like the reason why I was saying it's so the module would be a specific thing. So in this instance, the module is JEA DSC in this example here on my stream. That then contains resources, which I loosely say commandlets within that. But essentially, when you're importing you're still importing a PowerShell mod. It's still technically speaking, a PowerShell module. It just contains DSC resources within that module that apply to a specific configuration. Hope I got that right.
Yep. Yeah. So the module is, so when you say module, whatever you're doing, remember that a PowerShell module is just a package. It's just something that packages other stuff. So the PowerShell module can package aliases, package functions, package DSC resources, composite resource, all of those things. It's just packaged within a module. Classes, enums, a lot of those things.
One other thing which, just quickly to comment on Rob's question with regards to guest configuration Azure instances. That YouTube link that I sent was from our last meetup, which Wayne did a really good talk on Azure Arc hybrid guest configuration. Did a really good talk on Azure Arc. I really highly recommend you watch that if you really kind of want to start getting into, you want to use guest configuration. Sorry. There are limitations to guest configuration around how DSC resources are being processed within that. I'm not the expert on that specifics. I know, Gael, you probably might be able to explain a bit more because you've been working on it. But the YouTube video does a really good example, and it kind of talks about how, obviously, if you're wanting to, Azure Arc is really the onboard, is really bringing those hybrid resources, so those on-prem resources into the cloud, and be able to add and be able to manage them as an Azure resource, so they have their own identity. Some really exciting thing, which I got really quite passionate about, a little bit of segue, but the ability to be able to run function app and have those native services through Kubernetes on-prem and being able to be managed within Azure, which I think is really cool. Anyway, let's keep going. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see the VS Code live share? I'm not having any issues.
No, I can't. All I've got is the DSC pipeline folder, which is showing as well.
Okay,
empty.
I'll see.
You expand it, and there's nothing there.
Okay, I'll see if I can save that and focus participant. Can you see that now? I just put you on focus.
Yeah, it worked for me when you put on focus.
No, I might have to leave and come back. I'll leave and come back.
Okay.
The easiest way, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of those. This is the kind of, I'll be honest, this is the kind of sessions I love. I feel like polished talks are they're great, but when you kind of ruffle and tumbling
you need both. You need to have the idea with the polished talks, and then you need to find, how people struggle with where do we start? How do we set this up? You still learn different things, but you still learn.
That's it. I think that the best thing is that everyone still sees that everybody, even the experts, I wouldn't consider myself as an expert in DSC, but essentially the experts generally still have issues as well. All right, I can see you following me.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about the node block. So the node block essentially, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, Gael. Essentially, the node block defines the endpoint that this is to be assigned to. So there is set resource, there are going to be set things you can do. So you can essentially put hard code specific machine names, but we're just going to use localhost. Thanks, Gael. It really just allows you to associate to specific machine names. Now, you can do it, but there's a better way. So when you kind of start going, yeah,
it's a good start with localhost, because then you don't have to think about the name of the machine you're doing. You just create the MOF, so create the configuration document, and then from that from that document, you will say, hey, put that document on the machine I want to apply it, and apply it locally. So that's going to be what we call a push mode. So then you tell it where is the document and apply the document now. So then you see what's happening. That's a good start. I wouldn't start with a service. I would start with a file.
Yes, yeah, good idea. I was like, what service can I stop and start?
That's why dangerous. I find it's good and it's easier to demonstrate.
Okay.
So, yeah. So what you're doing now is you're saying for this node, which is the node localhost, wherever this morph will be applied, basically you want to say, I want this file to be in this state. And now you're going to start defining the state. You need to, so it's underlining, you've got the squiggly line, the red squiggly line, the file, because you need to add the properties. So then if you go line 13 and you do control space, I guess it's going to automatically tell you what are the properties available for that.
While we're doing that, I'm just going to quickly paste the resource in the chat so people can kind of see what resource we're using. So what we can do is we can just go control space and we can see the first one depends on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this property. So the dependence on property, actually, no, I'm not going to talk about this yet. We'll come back to it. We'll write a second resource and then we can talk about it.
Later,
yeah. Control. Ensure. So the first one is ensure. Ensure basically describes whether the resource is to be present or whether it's not to be absent. So in this instance, file will it be whether the file exists or whether the file doesn't exist. So we're just going to make it present. And this is one of the things this is kind of one of the big take homes and learnings for DSC is that it needs to be explicit. So if you, for instance, say, okay, I have a file, and this would be a great example, is you have a file, you've got that file in your configuration state, it's all great, and then you want to delete that file. By removing the specific element, like the block, the file's still going to be there. It's just not going to be managed under DSC. So you have to explicitly say for it to be absent if you want the file to be removed. That's one of the big take homes. It's explicit. And actually, slight segue. I was thinking about within Datum, within the builds to compile script for Datum to figure out, looking at the previous resultant set of policy and then essentially going, okay, if there's resources that are not present there, that it is implicit, it can implicitly add those specific resources and set the actual ensure to be absent so that it enforces the removal. And then I thought about it and I thought that's a bad idea, mainly because Datum is supposed to be a living document, and essentially adding content where it's not supposed to, it kind of breaks the rules of DSC, as I kind of feel like it makes it.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. And then think about something else. If you try to do that, keep track of the things, you're missing some point. When you get an OS which is installed, it already has so many things that you haven't configured. It's not because you have a bare OS that you have nothing, because nothing's configured in your DSC file. You have zillions of settings already in a certain state that you may not want to manage or change, but it's still there. You have the defaults. You have lots of registry keys. Are you going to create a file entry for every single file on your system? No, because that would be unmanageable. So you always assume, and that's something to remember, you always assume that you start from somewhere, and that somewhere needs to be very well managed. And sometimes it's easy if you use, let's say, if you're on Azure and you use one of the base image that are available to you, at least you start from somewhere that you know where it's going to be. It might change, but you know that if something breaks while your config didn't change, it was from the image. But usually what people need to do is create their own image, and then this process needs to also be very well, done in code and very well regulated. Like you need to manage your change there. But there's always a start, and basically from that start, you will hand over to DSC, and then DSC will do some changes.
And I think that the key thing is that you want to be able to understand what changes it's going to make, and then not have some, essentially a, something added to it where you don't know, and then essentially, I'm guessing that would obviously make it kind of defeats the purpose of DSC as well, because if you think about it, Well, actually, it doesn't defeat the purpose of DSC, but it really defeats the purpose of like a datum. Yeah, managing it.
Yeah,
because
managing changes. What's important is not, so what's really important is not managing everything, it's managing your changes and making it understandable, for a human. So basically it's an interface, and it's a collaborative one where you have many people, or one or two or many people working on one or two or many nodes, doing one or two or many changes. Complexity is not just having one server to manage, it's to have many servers to manage across a long time, across many people, with a lot of different workloads on them. So, the complexity just builds up. It just factors of the factors over the factors. So, so that's what managing through a pipeline makes sure that you manage your changes in a consistent way, and then you can test them and you can track them as well, and collaborate with different people. But we diverge. So you're creating you say, hey, I want this demo file, which is PowerShell DSC.txt, to make sure it's present and it has the content, hello world, this is from DSC. So where do you go from there?
All right. So I think, so what we can, I'll quickly just backstep for a sec, as kind of just for Christian, is that, so we've set the required properties for this resource. You can see that there's no squiggly line, it's allowed. So let's go ahead now and we can go ahead and compile this. So we can just basically go ahead and run this, make sure we've got the right version. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and run it. So you can see now we've ran it and nothing's happened. What this has done essentially is just become a function, which now we can execute. So what we can do now is we can call service test within the PowerShell window, or within PowerShell. So if we call service test, we can then, you can see there's a number of, there are a number of parameters. I wonder if I can do a get help on this. See this. So what's the parameter for window? I know it's
Sorry, I wasn't
show
watching
window.
the screen.
Oh,
I want this. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see within here you have a number of different properties, parameters that you can use to be able to invoke it. So essentially it's just a function which is wrapped with additional properties from for disaster configuration. The one that we're going to really focus on is the output path. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to run it and we're going to compile it to be a mod file. So what we can do here is I'll just go ahead and shut this window. I'm just back in the window now. So it's test. We can then go output path. And what I'm going to do is just dump it in the temp directory. I really need to clean this directory up. It's just, it's one of those things I never do. We can then compile it. So what we can see here is now we have a mod file. Let's go and open that mod file.
I think PS it. Yeah, that's fine. I think if you do from the command line on your terminal, you do PS edit.
Yep.
And then you do dtemp localhost, should just work.
That's cool.
I don't see the focus though, so you need to focus for us on the live share. You need to focus on that one.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Well, I see on the stream, not on my.
I'm still on demo 01. It might be because it's not in the DSC pipeline tree.
Yeah, that's why it's not in the same directory.
I see on Twitch. Yeah.
Give me a sec.
Just move it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not done that anyway.
That's because everyone's watching you.
Pressure is on.
MV.
All right. So let's see if that now is present.
Yeah, that's that.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so you can see within the mod file here, it's generated our resource instance here. And I'll be honest, I don't really know a lot about mods. I just tend to ignore them, mainly because it's too complicated. Gail's probably, feel free to berate me if you need to.
It's complicated and it's awful to watch. And it's a node. Basically, you need to understand it's a node format. So how to describe it? I would say it's a way to serialize. If I might be wrong, but it's a way to serialize SIM instances. So the idea is everything is transformed. It's transformed into SIM, and the reason is when DSC was written all those years ago, instead of rewriting a serializer and all of these things, they thought we already have WMI, which a lot of PowerShell is based on, especially at the time. And then they say, well, let's just reuse WMI, and then the LCM is within the WMI service, and then this document is a serialization of WMI. So then you can parse it. There's already a parser for that.
All right. I think
so it's just a way to record this information on those things for a computer to understand. So you should not need to write them by hand.
I hope you don't write them as by hand. I don't think there'd be. I'll be honest. I don't think there's any value in doing that.
Doing those configurations, no, but sometimes when, at least before class resources, so before using PowerShell class to write resource, DSC resource, when you write what we call a MOF resource, you had to write the MOF to define that resource, which you don't need, and you should not even learn it because you should just write a class. That is.
I'm just going to take that as don't learn it. It's now mature enough to actually. Yeah.
the thing you can do, the thing as you're showing now, you're showing the MOF. What's important there is you can see what's happening. You write something and then you serialize that into this localhost.mof. So that's a configuration document for your target node. So the node you want to manage, you will give that MOF and you will say get to the state which is defined there. So what is the state defined is what you start to have line 8.
Yeah. So, I don't think there's really anything else to add to that. I think we can probably just move on to actually starting the configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, so to actually run a local instance, to run a mod file, you just use start DSC configuration. I moved it, didn't I?
Yeah,
yes,
you did.
Yeah.
You can do relative path, yeah.
I'm just going to go. So essentially, you can see, and this is one of the key things as well, is that when you're starting DSC configuration, the commandlet, and you're actually pointing it, you point it to a path. You actually don't point it to a specific mod file. It just goes and finds it. The rule of thumb is that the file has to either be a localhost .mof, or it has to be the computer name .mof. Anything else, and it won't compile. Oh, sorry, it won't invoke. So this is the process where it'll import the MOF file into the LCM and then and start processing changes.
You need to add dash wait dash verbose for now. Under dash wait.
Yeah. Now.
Nope. There we go.
So another key quick takeaway here is that yes, so when you start DSC configuration out of the box, it'll run as a PS job. So what the verbose is really handy for actually seeing what's being applied, and the wait. So the verbose parameter is used to actually see what's happening, and then we're using the wait parameter essentially to run it natively in our standard console session. So it's not running as a job. So let's hit enter. It's a good start.
Yep. You should mention, I don't know if you mentioned that you're running as admin right now.
I'm not.
Then that's why this happens. I thought it started.
That was like the perfect timing. You're like, running it. All right. So what I'm going to I don't want to. I'm gonna be honest. I'm just going to run this in the terminal. Because.
Let's explain why it needs admin. So DSC, and so when you do this in WMF 5.1, it's running. So even if you run the command here, it doesn't run in your current PowerShell session. It runs through the LCM, through the service. The service by default is running as a system. So it's got local admin access to the machine. Think about it when you need to access, UNC share, things like this. It's running as a system account. So if you need to permission something within AD, it will have to be the domain, the computer account that has the permissions. But that's the double hopped kind of problem. You will find it and you will know. But it runs as system. So to be able to run a system and to access the service, you need to have elevated privileges, because you need to be able to talk to the WMI to tell him, hey, that's your configuration. Go and apply it. Otherwise, you get this lovely error message that microservice.
One moment, I'm just resharing the screen for Christian in Discord so he can see the terminal. All right, cool.
You could just share your screen through Teams.
Oh, I could totally do that. Oh my god, I am amateur hour. Amateur hour. I didn't think about that.
Don't bother for me. I look at the Twitch.
Okay. I'm hoping that
I can do as well. So
I'm hoping that it still keeps the video up. I just want to check the OBS is. No, it's frozen. Gael. I think I'm gonna have to. Oh, do I have to? No, it's back. It's back. Don't worry about me. All right, so I've just shared it. Anyway, we're back. That's the main thing. We're back. All right, so let's go ahead and actually run it this time, and you can see here now the configuration is actually run. All right, we can see within the output here. We've got a whole bunch of random stuff We've actually got output, and you can actually use to troubleshoot. So you can see the file is not specified, the related file and directory. It took blah, blah, blah. Can still not find the file. I don't think that's worked. Give me a sec. I don't think that's worked. Was it C-temp or D-temp?
C-temp. You said C.
Oh, no, it is there. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, that really kind of confused me because I've been dealing quite extensively with Choco, and Choco essentially is, it just essentially says, yep, package is not there, installing package. And you can kind of see the package installation process. With the file resource, I literally is like, can't find the file. I'm like, does that mean that it didn't apply it? Like it, yeah, so no, it applied it. And we can actually do, we can test that by actually going test DSC configuration. Do we need to specify a path? Yes, we do. Let's go see. No, actually, I'm just going to do this. Both. And we can see here, we can actually test our DSC configuration, and we can see that it's in desired state. So I think the next thing is that we'll talk a little bit about the depends on property. So let's go ahead and create a second file.
Try to do a second one which remove the same one, exactly the same. Because I think this is an important concept.
So to remove the same, like to remove
ensure absent, and then you put the destination path.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Then what's going to happen?
I have no idea. I generally don't do this.
Yeah. But, it's good for people to understand what's going to happen when you do something like this. So try to compile this.
So let's go ahead and compile.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to throw my hypothesis out there. So I gather because it runs through the file in a sequence, so it's going to ensure that the file is present first, and then it's going to remove the file.
I think it's going to break DSC. It'll come back and say that, it will remove the file, but if you ran essentially a DSC configuration test, it's going to fail either way because either one of those resources are conflicting.
It'll either be absent or present, yeah.
Yeah. Gail's sitting there with a very, very cheeky smile on his face. What about chat? Throw it at chat. What do you guys think?
Try to compile.
Yeah. All right. Hang on. I just gotta.
Oh yeah, it may even throw an error in the compile. I didn't even think of that.
You haven't compiled it yet.
Yeah, no. I'm just sorry. I'm so.
It's hard to talk, present, and at the same time do the thing.
I know it really is. It's
yeah, I've been there. Yeah, output path.
I'm just going to dump it.
Just do temp.
Oh no! Yeah, I'll just do temp. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, sorry. I was going to go.
No, not C temp. Your current temp. No.
Oh,
yeah, up to you.
I
would have said just put into your local temp, so then you can share it.
Yeah. Okay, so it essentially fails on the compilation of the process. Absent null.
That sounds like you have an issue with your. Okay, hold on. It's funny because that's not the correct issue I was expecting. It should throw, that's for sure. But in this case, so that they're identical in both cases. That's how it. Oh, test comment. Oh, that's part. I think. This is weird. I've never seen this issue like this. Let me just see the actual error message. Basically, it should fail, and I can't. Okay, I can't really see your error message properly. Okay, so it says value absent. No, please update these properties.
It's listing both the properties ensure and contents, and because contents isn't visible in demo file 2, that's where it's throwing an error for it.
It didn't need it if it wasn't present.
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't need to have gone, but put the contents are the same thing. But it should not be the issue, to be honest. That's
no, but that's why you're getting an absent null.
Yeah, but then run this one. You can put your service. What's the name? Your service test. As you put into your.
Well, we'd probably change that to be something a bit more. Oh, excuse me. I was going to say we could probably change that to something else than service test because it's not a service test; it's a file.
Okay. That's okay. So if you look at the bottom of this file.
Yes. Could have just turned it. Yeah. Okay.
You can just run the file.
Let's go run the file. Okay, let's just do that. I'm just going to push this up.
Okay, so the error message is not really useful. Honestly, I haven't hit that error message before. But basically, trust workspace continue. But basically, what it's saying is you have a file resource, and then you have two. So there's in the DSC resource, there's something that we call the key property, and the key property can be composite key or simple key. But basically, it says you can have only one instance of one unique instance of this key. So in this case, if your key is the destination path of the property, you can't have two resources with the same destination path, because you can't have, we're not telling it to do something and then something else. We're telling DSC to say that's the state. So you can't have a state to be at the same time present and absent for a given file. It can't be at the same time in a state where it exists and it doesn't exist. That's not possible. You want the end state. So you don't want to have flip-flap. You just want to have the end state. So basically, that would never compile. So you can't have something that does this. So so if you have a destination path, in this case, is probably the key of the file resource. So it's key means it's also mandatory to have it. And then basically, when you create a resource, a DSC resource, when you write one, you say, this property is a key, this property is not configurable, and this property is just something that you write but you don't read. You have some attributes you can set for each property. This error message is not useful, but I don't know why you're getting this one. That's not the usual one, as far as I remember. But I usually you won't have this issue, because that doesn't really make sense when you understand this. But I wanted to make sure people understand that it has to be unique. So if you're doing a file, it can only be either present or absent. If you do another file, you can do another file. So demo file 2 can be PowerShell DSC2.txt, no problem at all. And this one can be absent. And that's fine. There's no conflict because the destination path is different.
Coming to actually mention that, do we actually want to demo that? So we'll create the file.
Go for it.
Yeah.
You should be able to compile now.
Yep. I need to quickly go and actually create the. No, what we'll do, I'll make it present. I'll compile it, and then I'll flip it and make it absent, so we can see it present, and then we can see it disappear. Okay, cool. All right, so let's just jump back in. Let's go ahead and start our configuration. Oh, wait. Am I in the right directory? Why did I compile the right directory? ctemp. ctemp. Did I go ctemp temp? I must have. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Whoops.
No, that's okay. Did you move it? I haven't seen if you moved it or not.
Yeah, I moved it, but because I flipped it. Yeah. Anyway, let's just go ahead and rerun that. Update DSC configuration. Do I need to do update DSC configuration? I know how to use the fourth parameter. Sorry. Okay, cool. So I'll just quickly stop and go back for a second. What was happening there was that I was trying to reapply the same configuration over the top, and DSC essentially said, no, you have to use update DSC configuration to effectively update your configuration. Now, because we don't have a pulse, update DSC configurations used in a pull service configuration mode. Because we don't have that set up at the moment, what I just did was I just ran start DSC configuration and then just used the force parameter. So yeah, please run start DSC configuration command with the force parameter, apply a new configuration. And now if I wanted to update an existing configuration, I could just use existing, but we're just going to use force for the time being. All right, so that's now completed. So what we can do is...
So you can see first in the log. So the first time he went for the first resource, which is demo file. He went for a start, he went for the test, and then it skipped the set because the test returned true. We already ran the first, the previous morph, and that already created the file. So the file is already there and it's already compliant. So you can see, I don't know if you can highlight it when it says pocket rocket, LCM skipped set file demo file. Can you highlight the line so you go? Do you see which one I'm talking about? You look at the, now go up. 2 or 3 up. 1, 2 more. That one. Okay, hold on. Just one done. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen.
Oh.
So highlight the line. Yeah, just above this one, you've got the skip set. Not above, 2 above.
Oh, yeah. Skip set, this one there, yep.
Yeah, skip set there. And on this one, it's just saying like, okay, I've tested just before, and then it's compliant. So it's in the end state that I expected. So I don't have to set it. So it will only change the configuration if it's not compliant with what you expect. So what you wrote in your configuration script. But because it's the first time that we run the demo file too, so it went and then it started the set in this case. So yes, it did. You can see start set and then you can see end set when it finished this one. Yes, so you can see that it did something different. So if you run this one again, you should see for both, you should see again skip set and then skip set because it's already compliant.
Cool. So those two there.
That's the very basic first troubleshooting you can do when you write it. That's a good way to see what has changed and what's going on.
Alrighty. So let's flip it now. So what we're going to do with demo file 2 is we're going to make it absent. So essentially that file it's not permitted to exist. So let's go ahead and compile that.
And before you execute it, do you want to actually show that the file is in the directory?
Oh, we can just run test DSC configuration.
It's good to validate, with the Explorer, make sure it's there.
Okay.
Or test path or something.
Path, was it? C10, whoops. So we can see the 2 files are present. I really need to clean out my temp directory. So let's go ahead and we're going to be removing PowerShell DSC 2.txt. So let's go ahead and do that. Just make sure we run that. Let's go. Okay, cool. All right, so we can see skip set, end test.
Yeah, so it didn't need to write any set. Actually, in this case, start set. Yeah, there's one that starts set, and then
this is the wrong.
This is the wrong moth, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the wrong moth. I'm sitting here wondering. I'm like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I see only one start.
See temp.
If you remove it.
There we go. So we can
just make sure it's been removed. So look at the Explorer window and then check if it's still there.
So you can see.
You can see
the first one there, but the second one is not there.
And there's a line in the log which says the file has been successfully deleted.
Yes. So you can see there that it's been successfully deleted. All right. I think let's talk about depends on now, since we've kind of I think we've gone through the basics, the ensure present and absent. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to flip this back. So it depends on, so when you need to be able to run configuration that's within orders, that is, essentially it's ordered configuration. So for instance, you need to have a good example would be a service, or you need to have a Windows feature present prior to running a specific resource. So let's say, the Active Directory, it's a domain controller. That specific step takes place prior to another step within that. I am so like having memory. Like, I'm having a bad.
Now, this example is a bit different actually, because if you think about a service, an external service like this one, it's slightly different. You use wait for or something like this. In this case, if you want to talk about dependent, you can think about sometimes you need to you want to have a new software and you want to have it configured. So to be able to configure the software, you need to have it installed first. So if you start configuring something which is not there, then it's not going to work. So you need to make sure you do something first. So make sure you have the software installed first. And that could be done, for instance, using a resource to install a package through Chocolatey as an example. And then you will configure that software. So then the second one, the second resource to do the configuration would depend on the installation one. So in this case, if we want to have the demo file 2 done only after demo file 1 is in the expected state, then you would add the depends on property to the file demo file 2 resource properties. Does that make sense?
Yes, you elegantly put it in a way that I was struggling to figure out. I'm just trying to think of a way how I can demo this in a way, because essentially with 2 files, that there's no real kind of
you don't need, so when you do a file and another file, obviously they're completely independent, so you don't have this requirement, but you can show it first.
I could use Choco. This is Choco.
You could. I don't think people need to see this completely in action. You just show how you would do this, and then when people have this issue, they understand they need to look at the property. So line 21, you just go new line depends on, and then how do you write the depends on? That's the challenge.
Rob asks a question. So depends on sets the order stuff get configured. Essentially, it just orders the execution. That's probably the...
Well, yeah, so when you write it, you have, in theory, you have, you don't know when things going to be installed. Things going to be installed maybe in order of appearance or maybe not. But what really makes the difference is when you say, well, you need to do this one after that one. So you depends on this one. And you can do it depends on one thing, or you can do it depends on more than one thing. But and then there's different ways to do depends on. There's some variations, I would say. But the idea is you want to do this one after another one. So that's what will really enforce some sequence when you do something. But it's a sequence of state, not a sequence of action. And when I say that, it's complex, but that means, yes, that's a good example actually what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how can I make a good example? Yeah, we want the demo file to process. We want this file to be added after this one. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, do you want to talk about depends on while I write the property, the format or schema?
Yeah. No. So yeah. So in this one, what are we going to depends on? We depends on the resource, and then the specific instance. So let's go back. Let's show line 12. We are defining the file. Line 13 now. So we're defining the file is the name of the resource, and then what's in single quote demo file is the instance name of this resource. So you can have several instances of the file resource, as we have the demo file and demo file 2. And then we just say depends on the file resource instance demo file 2. So that's the syntax. Yep. So resource and then resource instance or instance name to be consistent. Yeah.
Now, I've got a quick question. Can you, depends on, can that pass a string array, or is it a static, is it a standard string? So can I essentially go, let's say if you had a hypothetical where you had a secondary resource, can you pass it in as an array?
So use IntelliSense to tell you that. Don't ask me, ask IntelliSense. I think IntelliSense should show you. So if you go after the depends on equal, you do control space, and it should tell you. I can't remember if it will do. I will try.
It is.
See.
It is. So you can see it's a string array. So might as well quickly demo that as well. I'll just quickly create a third resource. But this resource will just be standalone, and then we can make a change to that. That's just because that's something that I actually never thought about. I thought, hang on a second, I think that you could be able to do that. Anyway, so we now have a depends on. We are requiring this to be present prior to executing, prior to setting that state. Prior to setting that. Is there anything else needs to be added before we go ahead and execute?
Well, that's an example. You've got it there. Can you go to demo file 3?
I haven't added anything there to yet. What I'm going to do is add a second, we'll execute this and then we'll try an array just for because I don't want to have an error and then be like, oh God, it doesn't work. Okay.
That's good. No, go for it.
All right, so compile, and let's go and set it. So what we're going to have here now is a third file being added, but the key thing here is that you can see, actually, do we want to just go ahead and delete them?
No. Show the log in the
Oh, yeah. Cool. Sorry. Okay, so the first
thing. Look at what's the first one,
Yeah. So you can see demo file 2.
Just because we added the depends on of the first one to say, run this only after the second one, the demo file. So it's done it first, demo file 2, because there's that dependency. Even if it appears in your configuration before, it will be run after because of the depends on we added.
And then we have demo file and then demo file 3. So let's. I really should just do this. Let's see what happens. Definitely an unknown territory now. I think this would be fine. I think when we rerun the configuration, I'm just going to put the screen as well so that we're using it. Okay, cool. So you can see here we've got demo file 2 being executed, followed by demo file 3, and then demo file 1. I now have a very interesting thought. So we've got an array here of this specific depends on. What happens if we do this?
What happens if you've got it depends on demo file 1 in demo file 2 and demo file 1 also has depends on, like, you've got 2 that have a depend on each other, if that makes sense.
It'll break.
It's called a circular dependency.
Yeah.
Is it not what you're trying to test, Michael?
No, what I'm trying to test is that, okay, so demo file is dependent on demo file 2 and demo file 3. Demo file 3 is dependent on demo file 2. That technically means that the order of execution should be demo file 2, demo file 3, then demo file 1. Like there's technically speaking, there should be no circular dependency here because the dependency is demo file. Yeah, but that's
in your case that should work because that's the right thing. So what Chris said is circular dependency, and what would happen is it should. I can't remember if it does, but it should error at compilation.
If my stream stops, I'm holding Christian accountable.
No, it should be at the compilation stage. But at the moment you're doing, so you've done 2, 3, and 1.
Yep.
So that's what you expected.
That's what I expected. So essentially, yeah. So you can still, it's not the best, but okay. All right, let's put a dependency on. Let's create a circular dependency now. Oh, sorry, just put back. something similar. So
Did you just call it demo file, or did you call it demo file 1?
Called it demo file 1. Oh no, I didn't. Good call. Thank you. So let's go ahead and rerun. So yeah, circular dependency exists. File demo file 3 to file demo file. Please make sure that there's no circular reference. So cool. I'm just looking at the time. It's 8:30. All right.
Just one more thing I would add, like in the things that it's good to show people. So you've shown. So if you go back to the beginning of your configuration, when you have the import DSC resource, you say import DSC resource module name PS desired state configuration. So what is that PS desired state configuration module?
The default module.
That's the default one. That's the one which is built in. And put it simply, except for the file module, you probably shouldn't use that one. So that's the old. So literally, that's the very old module. That's the first module that hasn't changed, which is built in. So it's installed on every machine that has WMF 5.1, and that's the very old one, and it hasn't changed much. So the PowerShell team, well, the DSC team has updated it, which is now PS. What's it called? PS DSC Resources. That's a slightly updated versions with some bug fix, but really what you should be using is the XPS desired state configuration. So yeah. So the problem is,
what does the X stand for? Like I know, but I'm kind of like just want to make sure everyone else knows.
So that's something that's good to know. X. So long time ago, a very long time ago, actually. Some I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. The DSC was there was a lot of effort to write DSC resources, and X stand at the time was meant to express the experimental feature. And then you had some other naming convention, which was C, lowercase c at the beginning for community. No, actually, everything is community driven. If you go to dsccommunity.org, you will see like there's the website, and then there's a list of some of the resource and the things we do at the DSC community. And then if you go to github.com/DSC community, you should be able to see all the modules managed by the DSC community. But that means there's other modules that people write, and there's a lot more than just those ones. But those ones are the things that you can see with the DSC community. So you can see actually GADSC you mentioned earlier. There's some other modules if they don't. So you see you have some legacy names like X-Hyper-V. But we said so those one haven't been renamed yet. So XPS desired state configuration is one of them. So if you find a repository, you should find it as well. XPS desired state configuration. You could type in the search. PS, yeah. So if you open this one, it's a good example because the structure is always the same, and you can go into source. And then you can find examples. Source folder, yeah. Examples. And then you can see the resources. And you have, lots of stuff here. And usually those one are much more recent than the PS desired state configuration resources that you have built in your box. You see those ones being the last one updated 5 months ago only.
Yeah, you can see that. And the other thing is that the PowerShell gallery is also an excellent place to go look for DSC resources.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, so also go and check that out.
If you open, maybe
I'll use service because it's pretty easy.
X-Service if you want. And then this will show you that in those examples folder, you have configurations that shows you how you can create your config, what you just wrote, and then they just show you how you can use something similar. So in this case, if you scroll down a little bit, you will see import DSC resource, and then you have how to use the X service change service state. And then you say, that's the name of my service. I want it to be in that state, and I want to make sure the service is present.
That's one thing I kind of want to kind of start expanding on is that design state configuration, what we're writing here is like level 0. Design state configuration is still PowerShell, which means that it's still programmatic and you can still pass, you could still set, you can parameterize it. You can do a lot of really, really cool things with it. So while it might look a little different under the hood, so you can see here where, you essentially have variables which are being passed in through a parameter set, through parameters. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's just that basically they've taken it, you're wrapping it within a parameter. And the reason why you want to do that is because you need to parameterizing your resources makes it a lot easier to write. You don't want to be statically writing something that's going to have to change over time. And that's going to really kind of lead into the next level of DSC, which is using configuration data, which essentially means that you basically just pass it a big old heap of data, which then it can parameterize and process and produce DSC for you. And that means, and that's not just specific to, can you run a for each loop within a configuration?
Yes.
Yes, you could do. I think to quickly kind of talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to talk about datum yet because, but I'm just kind of showing what you can do within a configuration block. So this is, don't try and understand what's happening, but try and understand it. So this is what Gail's written. I've kind of made a tweak for myself. By the way, we can probably use this as you can probably check on my DSC configuration and figure out why it's not what I did and whether it was correct. Where is it? I'm literally having a memory blank right now. I know. Hang on, what's the configuration? What? Hang on, sorry. Hold up. Where is it? I know where it is. I just haven't opened it for a while. Root configuration, bingo. Okay, so this is the slightly modified version to what Gail's written. But you can see here, we're basically within a configuration block, quite complex implementation of different things we can do here. And you can see, there's a for each block. And this is really when it kind of, again, don't try and understand it. But essentially the idea is that, yes, you can run full-blown PowerShell. You can do certain things within here to do really, essentially parameterize those inputs. This is kind of taking a next level up from that. But
this is...
this is like heaven.
So this one, just to give context on why this is a bad example, basically that's one of configuration script I wrote. I know I don't need, so we don't need to write more configuration bits of things. We just have the data. We just manage the data in YAML files, and that will generate them off. Much more advanced for later, but basically you don't have to touch this one. And you absolutely don't have to touch this one. You can do a lot without writing. That's why I said earlier at the beginning, there's two ways of learning DSC. Like as we did today so far, showing the DSC constructs to understand how it works. Then we still need to look at what a DSC resource is and, what is the construct to do that. So if you want to write your own, and then there's the other part, which is, okay, if you have an infrastructure that you want to manage, I don't know, 10 VMs, 100 VMs, 1,000 VMs, how would you manage them? And then what's important is not about the configuration bits themselves, it's more about the data you give to it. So how do you manage this data? And then from this data, you can have something which represents your infrastructure. And there's already lots of things you can do using the common tasks module. So if you go DSC community/common tasks, in the GitHub, you will find there's a lot of things you can do. And in the DSC workshop, you have examples of how to use them. And basically, the common tasks module is just lots and lots of composites, more than you can chew. So if you go to the common tasks and then you go to source and then DSC resource, source folder. No, you're on the test unit. Go back to common task, source. And that's all of them. That's all of those are composites. So each of these are composites. So there's a few things you can do out of the box with this one. And you can configure lots of things in there. And then basically with these ones, you don't have to write any, and I say any DSC as we did today. You only have to write data. So that means, key values in YAML files. And then you can see a fair few examples in the DSC workshop. So DSC community/DSC workshop on GitHub as well.
But yes.
But that's much more advanced. Well, you can either start. So if you start with the DSC workshop, it's not that complicated because it doesn't go into the big details. But you have the lab on the exercises. So you can do, if you don't want to test on a machine, just want to write the MOF and being able to compile the MOF. Yeah, the DSC workshop is a good start. And then you have the summary and you have the exercises as well. And that's what Raymond is speaking at the PowerShell Summit North America, and he's going to show this, and he's also coming to PSConfig and he's going to show another side of this as well, of the DSC workshop. So there's so many content you can have. So he's going to have different content to give more examples, but basically it's, how do you write DSC in this context, and how do you consume, this type of projects? How do you get started with DSC within a pipeline like this?
Yeah, I think, but this is really the end state that you really want to be able to get your infrastructure into. I think that, it's once you can get to this point, the concepts of DSC, essentially like understanding the domain-specific language, a lot of it kind of just slowly drifts out the window. And then, like Gael says, it's more focused on just maintaining YAML. And once it makes it a lot easier to deal with. But we've got to walk before we can run, unfortunately. But
so you can start with just the YAML file and understand, the datum side of it without understanding DSC. But at some point, you will have to bridge the gap, whether you start from one end or the other end. Yeah,
I think that can be definitely for a later stream. I think we might wrap it up for tonight. Or for today. Yeah. Sure. But I think any other questions or anything being thrown out, and I really do like the informal sessions personally. I think that's I think that there's a lot of I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot more relatable. That's probably the word, I think. But
yeah, the benefit of this is you don't have many people making changes. You just change the end state in one place, and people can contribute to the same definition, so then they can share the same understanding. It's not just people, shooting bullets around and then see what sticks to the server.
So yeah, I'm Christian. Do you have any questions? I think we're going to have to pick this up next week anyway. If you're willing to wake up this early.
I normally wake up around 5, so yeah, I'm pretty good.
Okay.
On that front, and no, I've got no questions. It's definitely been educational, and it's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
I think I'm going to be honest. Thank you, Gael. Like you're an absolute gun, mate. Like you didn't have to do this, but you're just an absolute gun.
Me. It's that, or I would, doom scrolling on Twitter. So I think that actually changed a bit, my mind, and yeah. So yeah, that's good. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think it's like having you on and just having like the banter. I think is just great. And like I'm kind of I had to kind of jump off Reddit. I was saying to Christian, I had to jump off Reddit and off Twitter for a bit of time because the doom scrolling. It's pretty bad.
Speaking on that front, I must admit the best decision I ever made was getting rid of my social media accounts. I have not regretted that decision at all.
Yeah, there's the two sides of the coin, right? It's because you also get I get most of the information that I should care about from Twitter, but at the same time, I also spend a lot of time that I shouldn't, doom scrolling.
I actually put a firewall rule, a web content filter rule on my Twitter, basically blocking it during the day, and I did the same for news sites. So when I'm at work, I can just basically focus on work, and then like after work, I don't really care, But it just Anyway.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Chris. Cheers. Bye-bye.
See ya.